Hey, okay, so if this is Earth, you have the North Pole and the South Pole. And at the bottom, in the bottom area, that is Antarctica. In the South Pole. It's like a big block of ice. So scientists have studied both the North and the South Pole and realized that ice is melting and the sea level is rising since about the 19th century. And it's only been rising, it's been rising very slowly, but it doesn't matter, it's still rising. And it's rising because the water is now warmer. So recently on May 12th, a journal, Science and Geographical Research letters, had two different groups study the same thing, but they were in different areas. But they came up with the same answer, and it turns out that Antarctica is starting to collapse, it's starting to deteriorate. The ice shelves are melting off, and there's nothing to prevent it. The sea level is rising continuously. And I promise that it's going to happen. It's irreversible. The ice is becoming weaker on the edges, and it's just melting. About the next 10 years, it's going to come up another 4 feet. In the year 2014, in the 21st century, the water's going to rise much more quickly. It's going to be absolutely awful. So, Antarctica is basically like a bowl-shaped depression with the base of the ice below sea level. And the water is at the base of it. So you have the outsides that are breaking off and melting. And so the Antarctica is becoming smaller and smaller. And that's what's happening. A man named Thomas Wagner, who runs NASA's program on polar ice, he was involved in some of the research as well. And he was like, wow, yeah, that's going to happen. There's no preventing it. It's irreversible. The ice is melting. There's nothing we can do. The sea level is going to rise. And then a man named Eric Grigna, a glaciologist at California University at Irving, did another research. He used a rocket to send up some satellites to take pictures of Antarctica. And he had a couple planes go out and take pictures as well. And what they're taking pictures of, the 6 different glaciers that are in Antarctica. And a glacier is basically like a big, slow-moving ice block. And he focused on one and those are the glaciers, and he measured how fast they're melting. Plus, under it, he measured how fast it's deteriorating under it as well. And and how fast it's melting. And the water is just melting the ice, and there's no way to help it because it's so warm. So he was studying the 6 different glaciers, and he would notice that once they're gone, the sea level rises, and they become less and less of glaciers and more of just water. You can't do anything about it. The sea level will rise. And a man named Ian Johan, he was at the University of Washington, studied one specific glacier called Thwaites, and he measured the calculations basically from the pictures basically from a computer and how fast it's deteriorating. And he said that there's still water. It's too late. The ice is becoming weaker and weaker thanks to the warm water. So both of them were studying. Whenever they got together, they realized that it's going to happen. They had the same answer. And so they talked about it and discussed it, and their journals were released at the same time. They were published at the same time. In 1978, a man named John Mercer of Ohio State University did a glacier study. And he was warning people, Antarctica it's melting, it's deteriorating, there's nothing we can do. I'm just warning you. The greenhouse gases are making the water warmer. And he was telling people that and warning them. And people were like, yeah, okay, that's okay. Whatever, dude. And well, in 1987, he died, and it turned out that his research was actually right. The glaciers were becoming smaller, and Antarctica was right to warn them. So the greenhouse gases are harmful, yes. They're harming but it's not due to the temperature. It's because of the warm water way underneath. It's natural. And it's coming, the water is rising and it's mixing the water. Well, Antarctica has really extremely strong winds, and so the turbulence of the actual ice is just with all the turbulence of it, it's continuously moving the warmer ice up towards the surface. So whenever you have so you never have the warm water coming up, it's kind of like, whenever you have the weather with the warm air, and it's coming up and the cold air is coming down, and you have like a hurricane effect. It's kind of like that, like a spiral effect, like cylindrical things happening. It's the temperature conflict is the problem. So in Antarctica, you can see, well, you can't really see it, but there's an ozone between the sky and space. And scientists have found that out. Well, how did it get there? Well, what is happening? Well, the greenhouse gases floating up to the ozone, and it's basically from Freon, but there's other things that it's from too, like, well, now they've changed it, but it was like the AC and the refrigerator. In the past they used it, but they changed it now. It's a little better. And the greenhouse gas is going into the air, and now we still use some Freon for the AC and some refrigerators, but if you throw it out and it starts leaking everywhere, the Freon is going to dissipate into the air. And that's not all that great. Scientists uploaded research on that, on Antarctica, and that happening. And there's all these different reasons and conflicts and problems. So now the countries in the U.S. are extremely worried about the warm climate. The United Nations, the Scientific Committee, and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and their research was published in 2012, and now there's absolutely no way to prevent it. So the warm water is rising, and that's a problem. In 2012, the researchers said that the water level would rise 4 feet, and it would less than 4 feet and would inundate land, which some 3.7 Americans that it's very dangerous for these cities are Miami, New Orleans, New York, and Boston are highly vulnerable for that. 3.7 million Americans that live on the coastal area will have to move. A man named Richie B. Alley, a climate scientist at Pennsylvania State University, was a researcher, and he was studying the poles, and he was really starting to worry about the deteriorating ice, and he said it really shook him up. So you have to take it upon yourself, and because you're going to have to move if you live along the coastal area. You're not going to be able to go back to where you were, and people have no idea. It's a huge problem.